Hey there. I am sure that you have heard the phrase the new normal about 1,000 times by now. It is everywhere. But this makes sense. People yearn for normalcy during uncertain times, and it seems like our world is everything but normal right now. So, hey, we're just going to create a new one. The good news is that we have all gone to the internet to share what works and what doesn't to help people who are working from home for the first time. But what about their managers? The team leaders who have never led from their dining room table before. What about these guys? Here I have 5 ways to help you lead your team through the new normal. There are certain little luxuries as a leader that you experience in the office, such as the ability to be in the know. You've lost that opportunity to hear the buzz on the floor and the what's what chatter that happens before and after a meeting or passing through the halls. You may also be worried that you cannot see if your team is being productive or not. Okay, well, don't let your FOMO get the best of you. Don't send the message that you do not trust your team. And I am absolutely begging you, please do not require your team to message you when they need to step away from their computer or take their break. Adults should not have to raise their hand to go to the bathroom, and you certainly wouldn't make them stop by your office each time they're on their way out if you weren't working from home. And trust me, this type of expectation is likely going to lead your people to start thinking about other companies to go work for once we're past all of this. If you're that worried about it, I've got a healthier way for you to stay on top of your team's productivity. Use a project management tool. There are a ton of free ones online, but my preference is Trello because it's super simple to use. Trello allows you and your team to see who's working on what, when they're working on it, how far along they are on the project, and what else they have coming down the pipeline. It's a really great collaborative tool and it helps keep everybody on pace. You can also use Trello to track these projects without actually sharing it with your team. The purpose of this is just to keep track of what's going on, but not add another thing that your team has to follow up on. I personally used to be super self-conscious when I first started working from home because I had this fear, rational fear, that people might think that I'm not actually working. So it helped me personally to use this tool and share with my leader, even though I wasn't necessarily asked to, but share it with them so they can see what I'm working on. It shows how much bandwidth you have for more projects, or if you have any bandwidth for more projects. And it also gives a clear picture of when deliverables can be expected. This might give you the visibility that you're looking for without annoying your team or stressing them out by constantly asking them where they're at with things. Grab your team and set up work from home guidelines. Set the expectation for response time. You simply cannot assume that what you think is appropriate response time is what everyone else thinks is appropriate response time. Maybe you're that person who blocks out time on your calendar for checking email, like what I do, or maybe you're the person who drops whatever you're doing whenever a text or a chat message pops up. Whatever the expectation, make sure that everyone is in on it. This should also include your expectations for when calls should be returned, such as it's acceptable to return calls within 3 hours, or maybe it's acceptable to wait until tomorrow. Also think about how quickly you expect emails to be responded to. Maybe within 24 hours is acceptable to you. Whatever makes sense for your business and your team. Maybe you're also promoting text messages now when you normally don't, but you know that people are trying even harder to get your attention. If you do this, maybe now you're expecting this form of communication is for urgent matters only. You're definitely going to want to define what urgent actually means. A great idea to help with the constant interruptions when things just really aren't all that important is to create a red-yellow card. Provide your team with some sort of visual, it can just be in the form of an email, something that shows red and yellow, and explain in bullet points what type of questions or concerns would warrant an immediate phone call or immediate text, which might be a red category, versus what's going to be more appropriate in an email or can simply just wait for the next team meeting or one-on-one meeting with you. And that would be your yellow category. You're going to be amazed with how much more productive you can be without the interruptions of non-urgent items. It should go both ways for you too, though. Don't reach out to your team before or after hours or with a phone call that's going to interrupt what they're doing for something that can just wait. You may even set a boundary, and this boundary could be that no calls are going to happen before or after a certain time. Have a conversation with your team about these expectations and allow them to brainstorm the guidelines with you. That way, everyone's bought in and you have a well thought out plan that you decided on together. And it's something that's reasonable and really does work for everyone. So there's a lot of shifting and pivoting that's going on right now due to the coronavirus pandemic. Whether your business is being impacted in such a way where you're losing customers or potentially gaining them, or some other range of reasons. Take a look at your current metrics. Are they really appropriate for our new normal? Do they really matter in the same way as before? Does it make sense to shift these? Perhaps reprioritize a few things? Even if these changes are only temporary, they can do a whole lot of good for employees who are dealing with quite a bit of change right now in their own lives too. Now, to be clear, I am in no way suggesting that you lower the bar. That is certainly not me. I'm nearly always on the other side of that argument, in fact. I am simply suggesting that you consider taking a look at what matters right now and making sure that your metrics support that. You can always go back after we're through all of this. Okay, so I've got some news for you. You literally have to work harder than you already do just to make sure that people are on the same page. You don't get to see the look on people's faces when you deliver information or facilitate a discussion to know if they're in agreement and they're excited, or if they're confused or lost, or if they're even paying attention to you in the first place. You won't be able to read the room to see if they get it. So that means that you need to ask them for feedback. So instead of saying any questions, where everyone can just fall silent, do a roundtable after a major topic was discussed and allow each person a moment to speak. Start out by saying, what questions do you have? Then call on each person by name. And if there's an action plan that was just discussed, do a recap at the end of the meeting and remind everyone what they're actually doing. So for example, Jamie, you're going to develop the survey and send it to the team for review by Wednesday, and everyone else, you're going to provide Jamie with your feedback by Friday, end of day. This way, any confusion that has emerged can be addressed before everyone goes on their way to get their work done. Find out if your team's preferred way to receive feedback is the same or different now that they're working from home. Because in the office, it might have always just been face-to-face and you obviously don't have that option, but it is possible you can just switch to Zoom to keep that same sort of feel to it. I've worked with people who prefer working in person, so doing that type of feedback is appropriate, but I've also had team members who prefer to have a ton of detail and a very specific line of text where it is they need to be addressing their feedback in the form of a checklist. Email would be much more appropriate in this instance. Rather than assuming what works for you is going to work for them, just work harder to get them on the same page as you by asking for their feedback on communication, their needs, and adapt each of your team members' needs to be an inclusive leader. Set the example for your team. It would be completely unfair to ask you to act like everything is fine with everything that's going on in the world today, of course, and that would be totally fake. But what you can do is make sure that you are reliable. Be reliable for your team when everything else is so unpredictable. Your team used to spend at least 40 plus hours with you at work, so you got to help them make this transition easier. Keep your commitments, try harder to avoid being late or postponing meetings, get back to your team as quickly as possible when they reach out for help, and be as positive as you possibly can be during this time. I worked on a team that promoted a win of the week. And how it worked is that everyone on the team was encouraged to email in their wins, which could be anything that made them feel super accomplished for the week. And at the end of the week, all of the wins were sent together in an email to the entire team. Now, this would be a really good time to start wins of the week on your own team because you can keep everyone connected and show off the work that everyone is doing. Even better, you could identify these wins yourself and send it out to everyone. That is some real appreciation right there. I hope that you found these tips helpful. I would love to know what other tips you have that you could share with me. Bye now.